Hello everyone and welcome to How Is This Movie? My name is Dana Buckler and thank you for taking just a little time out of your day to listen. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at How Is This Movie, like us on Facebook at facebook.com/HowIsThisMovie. You can always reach out to me with questions or comments at hitmpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're enjoying this show, please take a moment and leave a review on whatever platform you use to listen. This is part 2 of my look at Star Wars. I am joined by Margot Donahue, co-host of the excellent podcast Book vs. Movie. In this episode, Margot and I discuss our experiences with the previous Star Wars films and then give our review of The Force Awakens. Please enjoy. And I am pleased to welcome Margot Donahue of one half of the Book vs. Movie podcast to How Is This Movie? Margot, how is everything today?
Everything is great. I'm thrilled to be on your show today.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Now, for those who have not heard of the Book vs. Movie podcast, can you talk just a little bit about what your show is about?
Sure. So I have a co-host. Her name is Margot as well. So I'm Margot D. She's Margot P. And we talk about books and movies. We talk about films that have been adapted from books. And we analyze both. We read the book, we watch the movie, we do a ton of research. We're both research geeks. And we talk about what we like and what we don't like, and we spoil like crazy. And we've been around for about a year now.
If there was an episode that you would recommend as sort of a jumping off point for the Book vs. Movie podcast, which one would that be?
I think for your fans, a good one for them would be Jaws. Margot and I did that episode over the summer, and it's one of our top downloaded episodes. We get a lot of great feedback from that one. So that's a good one. Jurassic Park, I think, is a good one. We also just did Silence of the Lambs, and that's been getting a lot of good downloads from us and stuff like that. So that's what I recommend.
One of the things that I really enjoy about your podcast is that on several occasions, you've made a pretty good case for the fact that the book isn't always better than the movie. And I'm really impressed by that.
Thank you. Well, it's that standard thing a lot of film reviewers do, or just certain people do. Well, the book is always better than the film. And then they continue the conversation. And I just like to reel it back. And it's like, nope, I actually have a few examples of that not being the case. One of them being Jaws. I think personally, Margot and I didn't like the book Jaws at all and found it a very unpleasant experience to read. And Jurassic Park kind of shocked me. When I was much younger and that book came out, I loved all those Michael Crichton books, and I remember it being much better. But reading it now compared to the movie, Steven Spielberg once again really improved upon the material and made the characters much more relatable, much more enjoyable. And then sometimes the book and movie are just different. Like Forrest Gump as a book is completely different, pear-shaped different from the movie. The characters all have different motivations. They're all there, but they're just different. So I think that's something like Margot and I just really like sort of exploring too. And we're pretty tough. Like if we don't like something, we say we don't like it.
What's really interesting, you mentioned Forrest Gump there just for a moment. Now I'm, spoiler alert, planning an episode on Forrest Gump actually pretty soon. And I checked the book out of the library, and on a couple episodes, I've actually read passages from books, like the Die Hard episode. I read a passage from Nothing Lasts Forever, and I picked up the Forrest Gump book, and I'm like, let's read a passage from this book, and I was like, nope. This is definitely, if they were to stay true to the novel, that would definitely be an R-rated film, bordering on an NC-17 rated film.
He curses a lot in the book. And in the book, he and Jenny have a relationship that spans decades and very romantic. And she's the one that breaks it off with him because she's the one that's level-headed. In the movie, it's Robin Wright Penn, who's being, an amazing actress, but they make Jenny this sort of sad, pathetic character that's like trendy and like falls apart because of the 60s and 70s and how women are treated. Whereas in the book, Jenny's a very strong, assertive character. I mean, it just happened. There's incidents after incidents in Forrest Gump. Like they're both good, but they're very different.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you to come on this show because, we've talked in the past, especially about Star Wars. And I remember we had a pretty lengthy conversation a couple months back, and I think it was right around the time that the official trailer for The Force Awakens was coming out. And you and I shared quite a few Star Wars stories. So it just seemed like you'd be the perfect fit for this episode. In the last episode that I did, I basically told a condensed version of my experiences leading up to the prequels. I spent a lot of time talking about the special editions. I spent a lot of time talking about my, that midnight showing I went to of The Phantom Menace, and then kind of skipped over talking about Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. I sort of it was kind of an afterthought. It's like, you know what, I could spend a lot of time talking about it, but honestly, what's the point?
Life is short.
But before we get to The Force Awakens, because that's really the main topic of this conversation, I have to share with you an email that I received a few days ago. Now, I'm lucky enough that I get a lot of listener emails, and I try to answer every one of them in a timely manner. I'm having some trouble trying to figure out exactly how to respond to this email, and I'm going to read it to you now, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. And it says, "Hello, Dana. I have been a long-time listener of your podcast, and I feel compelled to write to you. I think you are being too hard on the prequels, or as I refer to it, my Star Wars. As a kid growing up, I loved the prequels. They were funny, intense, and had a story I couldn't get enough of. Listening to you bash those films really bothered me. Most of your episodes, you do a wonderful job telling stories about how movies came to be, and maybe you should stick to doing that. If your podcast is going to shift into negative reviews of movies people love, I won't be subscribing anymore. Richard T." So, how should I respond to that? I decided not to write him right back because it probably wouldn't have been the best response. I've had some time to sort of stew it over a little bit. And to be fair, I do get emails from time to time. People tell me, they didn't like this or they didn't like that or they didn't agree with the story. But I've never really heard the term "my Star Wars," but it makes sense. So what are your thoughts?
So I would say, part of me wants to go, oh, Richard, funny, intense. Those movies are not funny. They're not very intense. There's just, you have to, like, if you're seeing it as an adult, you were a kid when you liked them. As an adult, you have to kind of step back and is this really the best use of Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, that script that they were given? If you've never seen them in anything else, try seeing them in other things. They're fantastic actors with a lot of intensity. Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi is phenomenal as a concept. Why couldn't they recognize that? Why didn't they realize that to its best potential? Nobody did their best work. They did a lot of work, but they didn't do their best work, I would say. But I would understand. I have a friend that's my age who's never seen Star Wars. And I said, "Oh, aren't you going to go see the Force Awakens?" She says, "Nah, I never cared for it. I didn't, And to me, it's like, well, when I was a kid, everyone loved Star Wars. I didn't understand that concept. So I know it can feel like if people who make fun of liking it so much, that kind of bothers me too. Because, maybe I am a nerd or whatever, but so what? Who's that bothering? So I get why you're upset, but you got to I think you're just going to have to put on your little big boy pants and kind of look at those movies with a little bit of a tougher lens. It's okay to do that. You could still enjoy them, but understand they're kind of junky.
And I want the record to show for everybody that's listening right now that I have probably seen the prequels more times than most people.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
I watched. I don't know if I like to torture myself a little bit, but every once in a while, including yesterday, I rewatched Revenge of the Sith yesterday because the argument is always made that it's the best of the prequels. And I've watched it over and over again, and I've tried to find redeeming qualities about it, and I really can't. And I want to make sure everybody understands that I know that hundreds, probably thousands of people worked on those movies, and there was a lot of talented people involved with making those films. So don't think I'm trying to disrespect anything that those people did. But when comparing it to the original trilogy, there is no comparison.
There's no comparison. They had no budget in the first one. Think about that. They had no budget, and they made it seem magical. And you cared about the people. You walked away. I turned you on to something called Red Letter Media.
And thank you, by the way, because I think I've seen everything that they've done now, by the way. Thank you.
They are phenomenal reviewers, and I got my lens into them was from Mental Floss, that they featured them as the video of the day. But Red Letter Media is this guy who basically takes apart films and said, this is what works and this is what doesn't work. It's kind of like what you and I like to do. He's a little filthier about it. Yeah. But he went through that first one, and boy, oh boy, he just nails it. Why they don't work. And he's not crapping on anybody who worked on it except for Lucas, I guess, because he surrounded himself with yes men and women who didn't say no, didn't say like Jar Jar Binks is a terrible idea. And those are not funny things coming out of his mouth. And it's like all of it is just bad, bad, bad. He had too much power and too much control. When he did the first one, he had hardly any power or control. And you could see like he had to rely on other people. And that's what it was, collaborative effort that made it so incredible. And I totally recommend to your listeners, if they've never heard of Red Letter Media, they should definitely look them up on YouTube.
I will try to include a link to the YouTube page in the show notes description. Speaking of that Red Letter Media, in the past episode, I briefly touched on Rick McCullum, who was the producer for the prequels. He'd collaborated with Lucas on the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and then he got together and helped put out the special editions. there's that scene in the Red Letter Media's sort of breakdown of the Phantom Menace where they have the first test screening just for the producers and the editors and everything, and the look on Rick McCullum's face, like the look is priceless. Like he has a look of shock on his face. You've got Lucas who's saying, well, maybe I went a little too far in some places.
I might have gone too far there in a couple of spots, and nobody's saying anything
and McCullum,
because it is so bad. And they realize, like, there's so many layers he attached to it that they can't even edit stuff out. They have to just take it as it is. And that guy, his face, he just looks destroyed. He just doesn't know how to respond. It begs the question that he was probably set to make a lot of money off these prequels as the producer. I've got to imagine. Yeah.
So
yeah.
At the same...
I'm not going to cry a river for that guy. I mean,
right.
he's done very well for himself. And that's another argument that drives me crazy. Like, well, they were popular. Well, they made money. Like, lots of crap makes money. It still doesn't make it not crap. It's just ridiculous. I love that screening and that scene in the movie when he's just, you could hear a pin drop. They just played this movie. This is going to be like the biggest thing in the world, in the movie world, and the whole room just is dead silent. And just George Lucas kind of pops up like, I think I may have gone too long there. It's hilarious.
It is. So so maybe we'll come back to the prequels in a little bit. I want to talk about what it must have been like to see Star Wars in the theater when it originally came out, because I wasn't born.
You weren't born yet.
I wasn't born. I was born in 1978. So I didn't see it yet.
You were a gleam in your parents' eyes.
Absolutely. So you saw it.
I did see it. My father, we lost him this year. He was a great guy. He loved movies, and he loved movies like this. And he worked for IBM, and he had a territory in New York City, and he saw these people standing in line to see this movie. And he's like a curious guy. Like, they would go, and he went up to them and was like, what are you standing in line for? It's New York City. It's like, what are you doing? And they said, oh, it's this movie, and it's about Star Wars, and it's this and that. And Dad said, well, do you think my kids would like it? And they're like, yeah, bring your kids. So we had no idea. We just got in the car and went to see Star Wars as a family. And that's the thing. It was a family experience. We all did it together. And of course, it was just like one of the most magical experiences ever. It was just completely fun and amazing. And it was like a family movie. Like, we all really enjoyed it.
So my first experience with Star Wars was seeing Return of the Jedi in 1983. And it's funny you mentioned a family thing, because my dad took my brother and my two sisters.
Yeah.
We didn't. I was 5. I didn't even know where I was going or what I was doing. But I remember seeing that movie. And I remember, and what I loved about it is because I think at the age of 5, I was too young to comprehend that I was seeing a sequel to Star Wars.
Yeah.
But as soon as the movie started, I remember saying, oh, there's Luke Skywalker, there's everybody. And I mean, I got the comprehension right then and there. And that's the earliest movie-going memory that I have. I
think me too. I'm trying, maybe some Disney movies or something like that. But it's the first time I remember being in a movie theater and just like wanting to leap out of my chair with joy. When they blew up the Death Star and all that stuff like that, all of that stuff. And just Princess Leia with the hair and all that, the hair buns and stuff like that. Just all of it just completely enchanted me. And one of those times I really sat and paid attention to a movie.
So I think it's safe to assume that we both, you clearly saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater. You saw Return of the Jedi in the theater. I'm sure you loved them. Would you put Empire as your favorite of those three, or how do those three films stack up for you?
Empire and The New Hope are kind of even for me. I go back and forth. I mean, Empire is the meatier movie. It's the tougher one, but it's more resonant and there's more going on there. But the first one is just so amazing because it was the first one.
Yeah.
And it had Obi-Wan and all that stuff. So I definitely, I wasn't thrilled with Return of the Jedi. I mean, it's okay, but I think by then I was a teenager and I was a little over those Ewoks.
So for me, like it's got to be just this deep rooted nostalgia in me, and maybe the fact that I did see Return in the theater. I love Return of the Jedi, and I know a lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of people love it, and it belongs in the Star Wars universe.
Oh, sure, it's fine. It's fine. I don't hate it. It's just not my favorite.
Rewatching it a couple weeks ago, the entire third act of that movie is just awe-inspiring. It's magical because there's three things going on at the same time, and that's really hard to pull off. The battle in space, the lightsaber duel with Darth Vader, and the battle that's going on at Endor, and it just keeps cutting back, and I just really love it. So let's talk about 83. we go through the 80s, we get into the 90s. There was a couple Ewok movies, and those are fine. Those are fine. Those are TV movies, and I've mentioned before that the Battle for Endor, the second Ewok movie, is surprisingly violent.
I've never seen it.
Oh, you've got to watch it. Well, you have to watch the first Ewok movie, and these are all on YouTube. You have to watch the first Ewok movie. It establishes a family on the moon of Endor that is crash landing on the moon of Endor, and I don't want to spoil what happens in the second one, but let's just say the second one is incredibly violent for a TV movie and for a Star Wars movie.
Okay.
So let's bring ourselves into the early to mid 90s. Mm-hmm. Star Wars is a thing. Everybody knows what Star Wars is. It's ingrained in our pop culture.
Right.
There's really no talk of prequels or anything like that. I mean, I think we didn't live in this digital age that we live in now, where I can already tell you how many movies Marvel's going to put out for the next 26 years, but we'll get back to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on the Star Wars special editions?
I saw the first time they reissued Star Wars into the theater, which was the first time since I was a kid. And that was exciting. I think I was babysitting. I took a little kid and they loved it. But I noticed Jabba and a couple of other stuff they added in there. And I was like, I'm not sure about that. But I knew he wanted to make money for the prequels. And I was totally okay with giving George Lucas my money to make prequels. That I was totally absolutely. So I thought they were fine. I mean, I don't like all the jazzy stuff he did on top of it with the digital and stuff, but they were fine. It was fun to see it in the theater again.
I agree. I'll agree to that point. We were all a little naive to see the red flags that were going up. With
yeah, we let a lot go.
Yeah,
we let a lot go.
We definitely let a lot. We gave a lot of passes after those films. So we know pretty much how you and I. I mean, it's known how you and I feel about the prequels. But if you could briefly take me through your first experience seeing The Phantom Menace, you had to have seen it in the theater. I mean, everybody saw it in the theater. Did you
Everybody
see it in the theater?
Saw it in the theater. Yeah, I did. And it's funny you mentioned that because I took one of my best friends in the world. She's my next door neighbor, and she never is into nerd stuff. She's sort of nerd-averse. If anything seems kind of nerdy, she gets a little ugh. She never saw Star Wars. I'm like, you got to see this with me. I heard some choppy reviews. I didn't go the first weekend. Heard some choppy. Like, well, it's Star Wars. How bad could it be? And then just sitting there and just the tedium of it. It's so boring and yet so complicated. I'm so ready to be stimulated, but they keep talking, and I have no idea what people are saying, and I have no idea why I'm supposed to care. It's just this horrible misuse of Samuel L. Jackson. You have Samuel L. Jackson in your movie. What does he do? He does nothing.
Absolutely
Nothing. And it just got more and more depressing. And I actually didn't see the other prequels in the theater. I just sort of and I sort of backed away.
So let's sort of bring ourselves to post 2005. There's now 6 Star Wars films. It kind of feels like it's over. It kind of feels like we live in a world where there's 3 good Star Wars movies. There's 3, and I'll say it, Richard T. There's 3 terrible Star Wars movies. Yeah,
Richard, you got to get it together. You got to. I'm sorry, dude. You can love something that's shitty.
Yeah.
It's okay to love something that's shitty, but you got to have some taste. At some point, you got to have more standards for what you're going to put yourself behind, okay?
So we're living in a post-Star Wars world where, there's still the onslaught of merchandising. There's still Star Wars video games popping up. I was somebody who got the Star Wars Battlefront games back when I used to play the Xbox and things like that. Mm-hmm. And would always often go back and revisit the original trilogy from time to time. I was good to at least watch those 3 movies at least once a year. That was something I just did. And I would do it by myself or with friends. And, it's like visiting an old friend. It's just...
Spike TV. Spike TV does that every once in a while. It's all weekend, and I'll just keep it on when I'm cleaning the apartment and doing stuff. Absolutely.
I'll have those... Absolutely. I'll own those movies on DVD and... Blu-ray.
Do you have a VHS of the originals?
I do have.
My very good friend Elizabeth lives down the street. She has she keeps it proudly on her table. Her table. On her coffee table.
I bought a box set years ago, and it was a box set that came out in 1990.
Yep.
So it was a remastered for 1990s technology.
Right.
But their original theatrical
mess around
cuts.
with it.
So
yeah.
So we're living in this post-Star Wars world. They re-release this. They start the process of re-releasing the movies in 3D. This starts in very early 2012. I mentioned on the previous podcast that I made it through about 30 minutes of The Phantom Menace, and I said, "What am I doing?"
And you're like, "Your amp's great.
What am I doing? What am I doing?" And then later on that year, we hear that Disney has bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion. And let's be clear about something. Lucasfilm owns several properties, not just the Star Wars properties. I mean, there's other films, there's other mediums, there's video game franchises, there's a bunch of stuff that Lucasfilms owns. But Disney paid $4 billion for one reason and one reason only, and that was to get the Star Wars license, to get the franchise, to do whatever it is they want. And they didn't sit idly on it for very long. They quickly announced that they're moving forward with 3 more films. Now, I'd love to hear what you were thinking about that before they announced one.
J.J. Abrams?
Yeah, exactly. Before they announced J.J. Abrams and a release date and everything. I mean, what were your thoughts? Disney, the mouse has bought Star Wars.
You know, Disney, they know how to make money. I honestly, I didn't think they would do it so quickly, like you said. Like, they announced this, and I thought they would take a few years to, you know, create the script and get the director. Like, it seems like they just hit the road running with it. George Lucas, I don't know if you've read it, like recently, he was rather surprised that they didn't want to take his notes after he sold them.
Absolutely.
The property.
From what I read, that they initially said that he would be brought on as a consultant to sort of help the new writers, you know, understand the Star Wars universe a little bit. And then he passed over his treatment for the next 3 films, and they just said, thanks, but no thanks. You know,
thanks, but no thanks. I mean, just, I don't think, do you think he gets like how upset people are with what he did to those movies? I get a feeling he's so isolated that he doesn't realize like how upset some people really were at those prequels.
Well, I recently saw an interview where they asked him, I can't remember exactly what the question was, so I'm going to be paraphrasing his answer. But he essentially said that he's beyond frustrated with the fact that he makes movies. When you make a movie, all you do is get criticized. And, you know, I got to say, just for a moment here, that, you know, I don't want this to be a constant shitfest on George Lucas, because the man did create Star Wars. Yeah. He did oversee, you know, the original trilogy. Now, Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back, but everybody knows that Lucas directed Return of the Jedi, even though his name is not listed as the director.
Right.
He was there every day. So, I mean,
he's a very philanthropic person.
Exactly,
he gives a lot of money back to the Bay Area where he's from. He's all accounts, he's a very nice person. He's a kind person. He's not a vicious person or selfish or whatever. But he's stuck in his own head.
I almost feel like that if he had essentially made the prequels not in the Star Wars universe, not done with Star Wars characters as a wholly original story, you know, tweaking a few things here, obviously not Jedis and everything like that, and made these 3 films, he may have gotten a pass on that. People might have looked at this and said, okay, this is a new intellectual property that he's created. You know, I'm just thinking out loud right now.
Right,
you know,
right.
When you look at the original Star Wars, and this, I'm going to touch on this more when we start talking about The Force Awakens, there just wasn't any magic in the prequels, and the first ones are magical. Let me hear your opinion on Star Trek 2009. Okay. Did you see that movie in the theater when it came out?
Is that the J.J. Abrams one?
That is the J.J. Abrams, yes.
Yeah, I'm definitely a Star Wars girl versus a Star Trek girl, but I do agree that every other Star Trek movie is good, and it's like the even ones, numbered ones are good, and the odd ones are terrible, or vice versa. And I love the documentaries from Mary Crosby. She has 2 documentaries about Star Trek that I love. But other than that, I've never saw Next Generation or Deep Space. I don't know any of that stuff. But I heard such good things about. I like J.J. Abrams, and I heard such good things about the reboot that I was like, well, I'll go check it out. And I absolutely loved it. I thought he did a fantastic job. He made Star Trek kind of cool and sexy again, which. That was deader than a doornail. Let's be honest.
I've never been a Star Trek guy. I've never.
Right.
I only saw. This is gonna make some people heads spin. I only saw the Wrath of Khan for the first time 3 years ago. Like I'm talking like I'm just not a Star Trek guy. The only Star Trek movie that I had seen multiple times was Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, the one with the humpback whales
in San Francisco.
Exactly. Yeah.
Totally. So that's the good one. That's a good one. And the Retcon is a good one. And like I said, if you're into Star Trek, and look up Mary Crosby's documentaries, because they are fantastic. It makes me understand why people love it so much. It just doesn't make me love it so much.
Right. So when I saw Star Trek 2009 in the theater, I'm right there with you. Love the movie.
Yeah.
It looked great. Abrams can do something with visual effects that I think very few directors seem to get a grasp on, and that is even the CGI effects for the most part look good. Like they look good. They look good. Like and we'll get back to, like, I've had some issues with Avatar. Some of the CGI on Avatar didn't look that great. But with Star Trek, I thought it looked really good. I'll go out there and say that I thought Star Trek Into Darkness was also a very good film, and I enjoyed that as well. I know there's a lot of people that don't like that one.
I know people don't like it. I found it very enjoyable. I thought he did it. I think he did a very good job. He cast those movies really well with good actors and gave them something to say and gave them motivation that I cared about. Because the problem with the Star Trek, the movies, after a while, the actors were so old and they were so kind of over it. Like, it was just throwing it away, and it's too bad. But like, that's, getting like really young, sexy people like into it really revitalized that whole thing. Yeah.
So let's talk about the announcement that J.J. Abrams has accepted the job. I say accepted because he initially was very skeptical to take the job. Because
he was terrified to take the job because he knew he cared. He's he's like my age. He grew up with it, so he thought it was important and special, and he wanted to give his level best effort because he knew if he didn't do a good job, the nerds would come after him. He may
not have recovered from it. That's the thing, and that's got to be. Right. I mean, that's got to be incredibly stressful and a daunting task. So when it was announced that he was going to be doing the next Star Wars film, what were your thoughts?
I thought, great, because I liked the Star Trek movie. I'm somebody who didn't care about Star Trek, and all of a sudden he made me really care about it. So I thought, this is someone who gets the material, and he's going to give it his best effort. So I was totally on board.
Okay.
I was totally on board.
So we're getting closer to actually talking about The Force Awakens.
Yes, let's talk about this movie.
So I'll quickly condense down the last year, okay? Because for the last year, I'll be the first to admit that I saw the teaser trailer that was released right around Thanksgiving 2014. There was nothing. There was nothing to that except, you see the Millennium Falcon for just a moment. But that was enough for me to say, I don't want to see anything else. I don't want to know anything else. And I spent a year, and it was one of the most difficult years of my life as far as, like, in a movie aspect, because that trailers, they kept coming out, and teaser spots kept coming out, and I was so frustrated, and I almost broke down a couple times, and literally had the YouTube open to the page, and I said, no, you're gonna love it that much more. So you were watching the trailers over the past year. You were kind of keeping an eye on things.
I was keeping an eye on it, and I didn't want it. It didn't need to be a pristine experience for me, so I was okay. But my thing was I didn't read any of the reviews. As soon as I knew that it was starting to get reviewed by people, I stayed off of Twitter. All of it. Because I wanted to just go in and have it be a fresh experience. And a good movie you should be able to go in and just sit in a chair and watch it and know what's happening. Because you wouldn't be able to do that with those prequels. I mean, you would sit in that chair like, who the hell are these people? What are they doing? So but I think that JJ did a great job.
Tell me about your expectations. Knowing that, we've been burned in the past, I know that I was quietly, cautiously optimistic. What were your thoughts? What were you thinking? Like, were you preparing yourself for the just in case factor? Like, just in case this film doesn't.
Of course.
But at the same time, I was going into it much more confident than, say, when I was going into Revenge of the Sith.
Well, I don't know. Do you follow Patton Oswalt on Twitter?
I don't, and I know how he is. Yeah, but I know he's a huge Star Wars guy.
He's a huge Star Wars guy. He's a huge nerd. And he just wrote, he went to see the premiere and he just said, "Thank you so much, Mr. Abrams." And I was like, okay. Because he wouldn't say that. And then Carrie Fisher, did you see Carrie Fisher on Good Morning America with her dog, Gary? Yeah. I mean, she was saying it's a good movie. Carrie Fisher's not going to lie to you. Carrie Fisher's going to say what she wants to say. And she would not go through all that trouble. Harrison Ford, who's absolutely one of those dull interviews ever. He never puts any energy into it and is on every show being upbeat and amazing. Like, I was like, these people, they care. Of course they care about this material more than I do. Like, this is that part of their lives. And if they could be enthusiastic about it, I think it's going to be pretty good.
Okay. So this is the part where I'm going to say spoilers to anybody that hasn't seen The Force Awakens yet. The movie's been out for over 2 weeks now. So if you haven't seen The Force Awakens, this is the part where you're going to want to stop for right now, because we're going to get into actually talking about the movie. And I made it a point not to spoil it for anybody. So don't let this podcast spoil going. Go see the movie. Go see it. That's all I'm going to say. Go see it. If you haven't seen it, you're probably one of only a few people on this planet right now.
I can't imagine.
So
how many times have you seen it? Tell me, how many times have you seen it?
Okay, so I've...
I want to know.
So I've seen The Force Awakens 4 times now.
Oh!
So I've seen it 4 times.
I've seen it twice.
So I've got this downtime, the other day, and there's a movie theater, and... I have certain movie theater rules, and, it was like, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday or something like that. And I was like, you know what? Movie theaters are like 2-minute drive from my house. I'm just going to go see the movie again. And I did. I just went in and sat down. And what I really liked doing was kind of watching the audience's reactions to certain things. I knew they were coming. So, and of course, you can be as spoil-filled as you want. Talk to me just overall. What was going through your head after you walked out of that movie the first time?
After I walked out of the movie the first time, I mean, the only thing that I regret is that the first time I saw it, it was like a 1 p.m., like the day after it opened, and it was like maybe like divorced dad's day or something, because there was a lot of like dads with their kids, like, and not the moms, right? So it was like the energy was just different. Like the kids were trying just to be good and not noisy. So like my friend Stacy and I was just huge Star Wars nerd. We were clapping and yelling, like, when we saw the Millennium Falcon and we saw all the chess game and all that stuff, we wanted to go crazy, and our audience was very subdued. They weren't jerks. They were just kind of subdued. So I wish I had gone to an earlier show, like maybe the midnight or something, because it would have been a little more raucous. But I also remember, like, it's a movie that's over 2 hours long, and I have a bad back and I don't like sitting through long movies, and I could have sat there for another 2 hours.
Absolutely.
Like they could have just immediately gone right into the next part of that story, and I would have been totally fine. I wouldn't have to need a bathroom break, nothing. I was totally into it.
I'm going to just say that I was right there with you at the same time.
Yeah.
Like when the Lucasfilm logo came up on the screen, and then the Star Wars logo came up, then the crawl happened. I didn't actually get a chance to read the crawl. I have in subsequent viewings that there's a brief little story in the past episode.
A woman blocked her crawl.
She did. She just completely would not get out of my way. All the apprehension that I had about that movie, and there was some. I mean, you had to have had some. It just melted away within the first 5 minutes of the movie. And just talking about the first scene on Jakku with
Max von Sydow.
Thank you. I was going to say Christopher Lee. With Max.
He's one of my favorite actors. I love The Exorcist. I love everything he's been in. He just brings so much weight and gravitas. And it's like he's a huge star. And
Absolutely.
like he's there right away. I was like, I'm in.
It took about 5 minutes for me to really calm myself down and say, this is going to be fun. And the moment that happened was Kylo Ren lands, he comes off the ship, they've got Poe Dameron, they drop Poe to his knees, and Kylo is just staring him right in the face. And when Poe says, so who talks first? You talk first? Do I talk first? Like all of a sudden, that moment right there, I just smiled. Because the light went off, like, okay, that's the type of humor that I'm used to in a Star Wars movie. Witty dialogue, not slapstick.
Right.
There wasn't like BB-8 wasn't like slipping all over the place and just being an idiot or anything like that. So all of a sudden it became this movie, it's smart and it looks really good right off the beginning. It looks really good. All of a sudden it looks like we're not in front of a big blue screen anymore. Like we're literally out in Abu Dhabi where they were filming that scene. So So what do you?
I feel the same way, and I felt like I really loved the fact that is it John Boyega? Is that how you say his name? Yeah. So Finn, who I love how he named him Finn. That's just like Finn and Poe, their relationship was so amazing. But the fact that here's a stormtrooper shooting at people, and you could tell he's just terrified of what he's about to do, and completely doesn't want to take part in this thing, and he doesn't know how to get out of it. And just I really liked that. I liked how they humanized a stormtrooper for a second, and like the blood on his face, on his helmet. But I loved him. I loved how he rescued him because it was the right thing to do, and they. I love their escape. I just love their escape from there. I thought that was fantastic. I liked all of the performances, I have to say. Like, I think everybody did a great job. And it's like the thing, you get good actors and you give them something to say.
Absolutely.
And keep the stakes high and make me care.
let's talk about sort of you talking about the performances. Let's talk about a few of the characters right off the bat. So we love Poe Dameron. We love Oscar Isaac. He's
what was he in before? He's new to me.
He was recently. This is just show the diversity that he has as an actor. He was recently in the movie Ex Machina.
I haven't seen that yet. Is that good? I might try to see that tonight.
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's really good.
Okay.
And you're going to look at Oscar Isaac in a completely different way when you watch that movie.
I think so.
So he was great. Daisy Ridley. Let's talk about her for a moment.
She's going to be such an inspiration for girls for generations. It makes my heart just grow 10 times bigger because she's even tougher than Leia. You know, she's her own person, and she's smart, and she's resourceful, and she's a good friend to people. And I just adored her. I love her character. I just think she's amazing. Rey is amazing. Absolutely. And I think she did an incredible job. She looked like she could kick ass.
Absolutely.
She looked like she could, she could really like carry that lightsaber, like she could win a fight. I loved her.
And we talked briefly about John Boyega for a moment. British actor, handles his accent very, very great in that movie. He does really well in this film. So let's talk about, because we're going to get into some more spoilers for just a moment. I want to talk about a couple other characters. And if I was disappointed about a couple things, it was that everybody was so good in this movie that I wanted more of them. Okay?
Yeah.
I wanted more of them. I really, for some reason, liked General Hux. I really liked his character. I love the fact that he had no problem standing up to Kylo Ren. Kind of like he was Kylo Ren. He was Kylo Ren's superior. It's like, you know what? Kylo Ren, you're still kind of in training, okay? This is my show, all right? And I'm going to call you out in front of Emperor Snoke, and I don't care. You're not going to do anything to me. Now, I wonder if that's sort of, that's going to lead to something, down the road.
Right.
And the speech that he gives before they fire the Starkiller weapon.
Oh,
I mean, that was
incredible.
What picture are you painting there with that entire speech? It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance. And he's like shaking as he gives that speech.
Absolutely.
Like he's physically being moved by what he's saying. Like it's just like seeping out of his pores. I loved that scene. And even though he's the bad guy, I was like, But that's another thing. Look, it's so well done. Like you're just really interested in everyone's motivations.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the two bad guys in this film, Kylo Ren, General Hux, when you don't necessarily have to like the character, but when you understand their motivation, when you truly understand why they are on that side, it makes sense. Like I'm sorry, I get a little frustrated because I'm going back to these prequels again for a moment. I didn't know what the hell was going on in any of those movies.
I had nobody to root for. I didn't care. I didn't care. Like, once again, I'll say it again. You have Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor going out on a journey. I should be like, this is going to be exciting. It's going to be thrilling. I want them to win. I want them to fight really fearsome bad guys and win. And I didn't care. They were just going to meetings for all I understood. Just like, it's just,
Let's talk a moment about some of the returning characters from the Star Wars universe. First introduction of, and if I remember correctly, we've had this conversation in the past. You were a big Han Solo fan from the original Star Wars.
He was my first movie boyfriend. Like there was the first time I saw somebody, like I had a TV boyfriend. I think it was Fonzie. I think he was my first movie boyfriend. Of course Han Solo would be a terrible boyfriend to have, but what did I know? I was just a kid. But he's so charismatic. I mean, he brings so much to that part that it's just because he's not a hero. I mean, he's a rascal of a guy, like going about being selfish and doing what he wants to do, and then he jumps in when you need him, and it's Harrison Ford. He's listed first, by the way, in the credits, which is the first time it's happened in a Star Wars film, and he just looks like he's having a ball.
Well, I found interesting about the character was it's 30 years later, and he's back to smuggling again.
He's smuggling shit again.
Yeah,
like,
he's
what
right.
He does.
That's what he does.
That's who he is.
It was just incredible.
And Chewie, and seeing Chewie again,
he had more to do in this movie than any other film ever.
That's the best Chewie performance ever. But Peter Mayhew must have been so thrilled with that because Chewie was a real comrade for Han Solo.
Absolutely. Yeah. We briefly see C-3PO with a red arm, which maybe gets explained in another. Yeah. Okay. But
probably the next one. He's only there for very briefly and just kind of for comic effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is what he's kind of always there for, I guess.
What are your thoughts?
Hopefully next time we'll get more of him.
I hope so. I really do.
Yeah.
I really do. What are your thoughts on Carrie Fisher?
I am a big Carrie Fisher supporter. Princess Leia is a big character to me, just as being a young girl. I looked up to her. She's a fantastic writer. I like Carrie Fisher's writing. I think she's smart and funny and all that stuff. I wish she was doing more in the movie. Yeah. I loved seeing Princess Leia there. I'm glad she didn't get a ton of Botox and all that other stuff. She looked real. She's still beautiful and she's still smart, and you could just see that radiating from her. But I wish they gave her more to do and hopefully and acted more like a general. Like at some point somebody says ma'am to her, and I was kind of like maybe go, ugh. No, they should be saying general. So hopefully in the next one she'll have more to do.
And that's,
I'm hoping.
And that just goes back to, like I said, if I have gripes with the film, it's that I wanted to see more of the characters. One of the things that I had a conversation with a coworker of mine a couple of nights ago about this film, and he hadn't seen the movie, and he goes, "Well, is there anything wrong with the movie?" And I said, "No, there's nothing wrong with the movie. What's wrong with it? What the issue is that we don't have the complete story. We don't know what's going on." We can call back to the original trilogy with no problem. Oh, this is why this happened, and this is why this happened, and it's an interesting situation to find yourself in, because after the first prequel, I didn't give a shit. I didn't care.
Right.
Okay. Well, there's another one coming out in 3 years. 3 years, by the way, was just long enough for me to go, oh, well, this one might be pretty good. Well, I'll give this one a try. Like it was the prequel effect, as I'll call it. It was just long enough for me to say, you know what, maybe I'm ready to jump back in this universe. With this Force Awakens, I want the answers, and I want them now, and I have to wait 2 years. Well, not even 2 years, actually, a year and a half.
Yeah, when is it coming out? You do you know the schedule?
I do. They just released the schedule. So we have Star Wars Rogue One. Comes out December of next year. And for those who don't know what Rogue One is, Disney is doing an anthology series, a standalone anthology series that is going to tell separate stories set in the Star Wars universe. This first one, Rogue One, is going to be set after the events of Revenge of the Sith, before the events of A New Hope, and it is actually going to involve the rebels who actually steal the plans to the Death Star. And Okay, and then the Felicity Jones. Am I saying that? Mm-hmm. She's the one that was in the Stephen Hawkins film that just came out, The Theory of Everything. Okay, she is the lead actress in that movie.
Okay.
So she's the lead actress in that film. So and that movie is being directed by Gareth Edwards. And Gareth Edwards. Now, this is actually something I want to touch on. I didn't mean to bring it up right now, but I want to touch on it right now because I actually have a concern. And Gareth Edwards, he came out of nowhere with a movie called Monsters, which was a small independent film that came out 3 or 4 years ago. Have you seen it?
Mm-mm.
Think of it.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's actually a very good movie. It's worth your time. It's worth watching.
Monsters.
On the strength of that, he was given his first big studio project, which was the Godzilla film that came out last year.
Oh, did I see that? Who was in that? I saw the Matthew Broderick one. That was really terrible.
That was bad. No, the Bryan Cranston is in the new Godzilla film for 15 minutes.
Oh, I didn't see it.
No.
Is it bad or is it?
So this is what Gareth did, in my opinion. Okay? And I applaud him for attempting this. He did what I'll call the Jaws version of Godzilla. And by that I mean is don't show the monster till the third act of the movie.
Right.
Which again, I like that, but in a world where we kind of already know what Godzilla is and there's been 30 plus films, I don't want you to wait until the end for the big reveal. You know, I think we should just go ahead and jump right into it. But then again, and I think a lot of people didn't like the movie for the fact that it was very little Godzilla in the Godzilla film. It was a well-made movie, very competently directed. So this Star Wars Rogue One is going to be his second big budget film. And I get nervous about the idea. Maybe this is all for nothing. The movie's going to be fantastic, but the same thing applies to Star Wars Episode 8. J.J. Abrams is not directing that movie. Rian Johnson is. Rian Johnson's only claim to fame is a movie called Looper with Bruce Willis and...
the kid from Third Rock from the Sun, right?
The guy with the 3 names.
Yeah, he's got 3 names. We'll figure it out.
Figure it out.
In post-edit, we'll figure it out. So wait, I'm sorry, let me interrupt you because I need to know. So we're not going to know about Rey until like 2 movies from now,
right? And I'm sorry because let me go back to you said when's the next one coming out? So December of next year we get Star Wars Rogue One. Well, December of this year. Happy New Year, everyone. We're recording on January 1st.
Yeah.
So December of this year we're going to get Star Wars Rogue One, which is a standalone film, is not part of this new trilogy.
Okay.
Now, May of 2017 is they just announced the release for Star Wars Episode 8. So we're a year and a half away from that. Okay.
Okay.
And that one is being directed by Rian Johnson. Rian Johnson did a movie with Looper and the kid who eventually will become Robin in the Nolan Batman universe. So,
yes, I know. I like him too. He just did. He was on that show.
Right now, people are screaming at us.
Oh, they're just screaming at us, idiots. He
Joseph
just did Rhythm
Gordon-Levitt.
Nation, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Sing-along.
I got it. Joseph Gordon-Levitt. All I could say was the guy with 3 names. So
he was he was on that lip sync-a-thon show, whatever that's called. He did Rhythm Nation, Janet Jackson's Rhythm, and he had the makeup and everything.
That's awesome.
Great.
So Rian Johnson is doing Episode 8. JJ is staying on in a producer's role. I just read a recent article where JJ feels like maybe he's made a mistake not agreeing to direct the entire trilogy.
Oh.
So now, after that movie, in 2018, we get another Star Wars anthology movie. Okay. This one is going to be the young Han Solo movie.
Oh.
Okay, so this one will be...
Okay, I'll watch that.
This will be the one this is going to be the origin story, if you will, of Han Solo. Now,
that's very cool.
Disney has already begun the casting process for that film, and as of this past week have already auditioned 2,500 people for that role of the young Han Solo.
Wow.
They got to get that one right, and they're taking their time on that one. So that movie comes out, and then in 2019... we get Star Wars Episode 9, the conclusion to this new trilogy. That movie is being directed by Colin Trevorrow. Again, Colin Trevorrow made a small independent film called Safety Not Guaranteed that came out 3-4 years ago. Again, a really fun, small, independent film. It was really good, by the way. Put that one on your list to see as well.
I'm going to write that down.
Monsters and Safety Not Guaranteed. They're both fun, independent films. On the strength of Safety Not Guaranteed, Colin Trevorrow was given Jurassic World. And so he made Jurassic World that came out this past year. That makes me actually even more nervous.
Yeah. Did you see Jurassic World?
Well, I did. Yeah, I mean, it was inevitable that I was going to say it's a passable film, but it's
a fine film. It's passable, but the characters are not very believable or likable.
Exactly. Yeah, likable. That's the key. I mean, when you can't identify with a character, that goes back to the prequels. You can't identify with any of the characters in the Star Wars: The Force Awakens. You can identify with Finn. You can identify with Rey. You can put yourself in their shoes and say, you know what, I probably would do the exact same thing that they're doing right now. And their motivations make sense. So Jurassic World, it was like, I hope I don't get an email from Richard about this, but that movie was a bit of a mess and wasn't really any likable characters. So you got Colin Trevorrow is going to be doing that. So we have a Star Wars movie, in a sense. We've got, am I counting 5? Rogue One, Episode 8, Han Solo, Episode 9, and then there is another anthology film that is coming out after Episode 9. And from what I've read, it's going to be the story of Boba Fett. And this...
Oh, wow. People have been waiting for that for years.
So this brings me to a part where I want to ask you, is there such a thing as too much Star Wars?
I think so.
Okay.
For me, that's a lot. I mean, who knows how the quality... I mean, I'm one of those people, though, like, I'm not a Marvel person, so I can't keep in touch. Those movies come out, I can't tell them apart from each other. It's too many characters. It's too confusing for me. It's just not part of my world. I'm much more part of the world of Star Wars, but I don't know. I mean, I hope they're all good. I mean, it's fun to think of like once a year there's this really great movie coming out that I could look forward to, but I do worry about too much going on. Are they producing all these movies at the same time? And
well, right now,
who's in charge of all of it?
Right now, as we speak, Rogue One started filming back in August. So we could probably get a teaser trailer for that any time now. And I'm not putting myself in a no trailer induced situation again.
No, don't do that to yourself anymore.
I'm not doing that again.
Life is short, Dana.
I know. So we have and then Episode 8, as far as I know, begins filming the end of this month. So they've got multiple projects going on. in previous episodes, the very first time I did a Star Wars mini episode, when the first teaser trailer came out, I was worried about exactly what we're talking about. I was worried about too much Star Wars at too much Star Wars too quickly, because there's a common thread between Marvel and Star Wars, and that is they are both owned by Disney. Okay, so I stopped going to see Marvel films after Avengers in the theater.
Right.
In fact, truth be known, I walked out of the Avengers because
really,
I did. I walked out of the Avengers because I am such, and this is again me. I have crazy movie rules. I like to identify with what I'm seeing. I like to relate to the characters. I love Nolan's trilogy because everything about that movie, for the most part, was realistic. Was like this is a real city. This could really happen. It will never happen, but it could happen. So when I'm watching the Avengers and they're on that aircraft carrier, and all of a sudden the aircraft carrier sprouts propellers and just takes off into the sky, that was the part where I was like, okay, I'm good, I'm out. And I got up and I just literally just walked out of the theater. And it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, I don't care.
Right.
Like, this is silly.
Those movies I get on demand, in demand.
Yeah. And
as soon as they're on in demand, because I could be home, I could be, reading magazines and doing other stuff, and then I'm entertained by it just enough.
Right.
Because I don't care. I just want to be entertained sometimes, and that's what I get from them. But I don't care about any of those characters. I wish I could, but
the argument that I would make about those movies, and I stand by this argument, was that you in no way feel any true conflict or threat against any of these characters, because Marvel has already announced. If I watch Avengers Age of Ultron that came out last year, I'm not worried about Thor, Captain America, the Hulk, Iron Man. I'm not worried about any of them. They're not in any real danger because Marvel's already told me that each of them has got another 5 movies apiece coming out.
Right.
So why should I worry about, well, they're obviously going to be okay.
Right,
now,
of course.
Now, with the Star Wars, again, spoiler alert, with the Star Wars movies, you don't know.
No.
You honestly don't know. Do we know that there's another Han Solo movie coming out? Absolutely. Did Han Solo die in The Force Awakens? Yes, he did. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler, yeah. How did you feel when that happened? As soon as he started walking on the plank towards him, I knew he was going to be toast.
I knew it was going to happen. I didn't know how it was going to happen. He wanted out of the series after Empire Strikes Back. He did. He wanted out. So I knew he wasn't making it, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. I was, it was sad. It was sad,
but he died a hero, which was really important to him.
He did.
That's why,
and the best part, I mean, Chewie's reaction right after that. I mean, he takes that bowcaster, which, by the way, great foreshadowing on that bowcaster. They kept referencing to Chewie's weapon throughout the movie. Yeah. And then you see Chewie get a shot off and hit Kylo Ren with that thing. I was just like, that's what I say when Chewie did way more than he's done in any other film.
Chewie was a great character in this movie. I really enjoyed, I've always enjoyed Chewie, but he was so much more active and so much more, he was so far more important to the plot this time.
Absolutely.
And was a real hero, yeah.
Like I said, going back to what I said about I know there's a Han Solo movie coming out, but it's an origin story about him, so I'm not worried about it. When Episode 8 comes, any of the main characters could maybe not make it through the movie.
Oh, of course not. Luke might not make it. Yeah.
So to me, there is a real what-if question. With the Marvel movies, there's no what-if question for me, and that's why I've been taken out of that universe.
Because I can understand that.
You said, I don't care. Now, have I seen all the movies? Yeah, I've stopped going to see them in the theater. I saw Captain America Winter Soldier, and I'll be honest with you. That was a fun movie. That was enjoyable.
Of course.
It was. They're really well made. They're
very well made. The acting is always good. I think, and I like the Iron Man movies very much.
And there's funny banter. Enjoyable. It's witty. Yeah. But when it all comes down to it, I don't care because it just doesn't. Nothing's going to happen to any of them. They need to kill off a character. Somebody needs to go.
They got to kill off one of them. Yeah. Which one of the actors is willing to do that?
So it's not Robert Downey Jr. He
makes too much money.
So getting back to the Star Wars Force Awakens, Captain Phasma. That was a character I was so excited for. This was the stormtrooper that was in the silver. That's only in the movie for a brief period of time. It's
okay.
She's played by the actress who's in Game of Thrones.
She's really tall.
Really tall.
Right?
Yeah,
she's like 6'2" or something like that.
Yeah, she plays Captain Phasma. This was a character I was super excited for because I just thought she looked so badass. And that first time you get that shot of her just sort of walking up to Kylo saying, "What do we do with the villagers?" And he says, "Kill them all." Like, by the way, that sets a tone right there.
Yeah. Totally.
She's only in the movie for 3 other small scenes, and then she's gone. I was disappointed about that. That was a character I really wanted to see more of.
I wanted to see more of her too, and I wanted to see her without the helmet on. I wanted to have her like take it off and like have Kylo take off his helmet and like have them like have an interaction or something like that. Maybe the second one.
Well,
maybe,
that's exactly it.
Maybe they're setting us up for that because we never saw her face.
Exactly.
It's just her presence and her voice that you're like, she's scary. I want to find out about her.
And that just goes back to the whole, like I said, we already know the story of the original trilogy, and it's so frustrating not to know the story of this one.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about possibly my favorite character in the movie, and that was BB-8. And I can say that...
Oh, I love BB-8!
I can say that after now seeing the movie 4 times, that they could have gone a lot of different directions with introducing a new droid, and they may have just... I mean, they knocked it out of the park. I mean, that
Absolutely.
is... And the fact that is a practical effect, that is a real purpose-built droid... That there was maybe a couple CGI scenes, but whatever. I just fell in love with that little droid, and it happened more and more and more. And my favorite scene involving BB-8 was when they sort of get back to the Rebel compound towards the end of the film, and BB sees Poe for the first time since they were on Jakku together, and you just see him racing down the runway. He's so excited to see Poe, and there's just like, to me that there was so much emotion in that little 2-second scene. That my heart melted. I was just like, I just love that character so much.
I loved it when he lit a lighter.
Yeah, give the little thumbs up.
Thumbs up to I love that. I thought he was. R2-D2 is one of my favorite robots of all moviedom, but BB-8's pretty much kicked his ass. I think he's so cute and he's so useful and he's spunky, and I just fell in love with him.
So And I know we're not alone on that. Like, everybody loves that character. And I just loved it. And there's a couple other things I want to cover, but let's talk about Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
Okay. So what's up? Let's talk about that for a second. So let me give you my part I'll tell you when I thought he was going to be introduced in the film. And that was the lightsaber duel at the end. When after Kylo Ren slashes Finn in the back, and the lightsaber just is tossed in the snow, and he's trying to pull the lightsaber, he's trying to force grab the lightsaber, and it's going in 2 different directions. I said, well, this is it. This is where Luke's coming in. I was like, holy shit, we're going to see Luke. And it turned out to be Rey, and that was, again, an awesome scene.
An awesome scene. That's like one of the reasons like you want to go to a movie and go to the theater is to see that kind of a scene, because it's a big payoff. It's like she's the one.
She's the one.
And it's fantastic.
So let me ask. Okay, so here a testament to how good The Force Awakens. It was an hour and 10 minutes into the movie before I was like, oh yeah, Luke Skywalker's supposed to be in this movie. Where is he? Because I was so into the movie. Where were you with that? Like, at what point were you thinking, we got to get Luke in this movie at some point?
I mean, every time I was just curious about, like, every time they mention Luke, where is he? Why did he go away? It's all that stuff, the map and everything like that. And I love Luke Skywalker. I loved how they ended it, though. Like, that's a perfect ending. Like, she's going to meet him. Like, she's going to be his student now. And is she his daughter? Is she Obi-Wan's daughter? Like, what's going on with her? That's what I want to know.
See, that's good. I mean, that's exactly it. And when he turned around and he looked at him, and it was Mark Hamill.
Oh, please. It's great. It's like out of a Zeppelin cover, Led Zeppelin cover or something.
Exactly.
And he turned around, clipped some mower around him.
The crowd in the theater, and I didn't mention this at all, but the crowd in the theater, the first time I saw it, they were into it. I mean,
I wish I had seen that.
There was applauses and cheering and people just started screaming when Luke turned around and it was Luke. And here's all that's going through my mind. The movie's over. No, the movie's over. This is ending because it
can't be.
It went into this big panoramic scene, and I was like, it kept the camera panned back, and I was like, uh-oh, this is it. And then it says directed by J.J. Abrams on it. I was like, oh.
I know. Like I said to you before, like I could have just sat there for another 2.5 hours and seen the second part right away. No bathroom break, nothing. Like I was totally into it.
So I think everybody that's listening knows clearly that we are both big fans of this movie.
Yeah, I think we've demonstrated that.
I don't want to get into this ranking system. So many people so many reviews that I've read and watched on YouTube, and everybody, well, where does it rank? Where does it rank? For me, it's in the Star Wars universe that I know and love, and I'm so thankful that it's back. I tweeted after I saw the movie, mini review, Star Wars, or I tweeted spoiler-free review, Star Wars is back, and that's it.
Right.
And I stand by that.
Yeah.
This world, it looked... Okay, let me just say this. When you see a Star Wars movie, Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, you see things you've never seen before, and you're just in bewilderment sometimes and in awe. And that happened in The Force Awakens for me.
Right.
It didn't happen in the prequels. In the prequels, what I saw was, that doesn't look real. That doesn't look real. That really doesn't look real. Are we in a 50s diner? Is he talking to somebody in a 50s diner with robot waitresses? What is going on? So that is...
Right.
Okay, so I'm not going to rank it, but I'm going to tell you that it is in the Star Wars universe. Where is it for you?
It's in the Star Wars universe, but I'm the one who doesn't even talk about the prequels. I can't even... that went into my brain and went out very quickly. Poor Richard T. He's going to be so upset with us trashing his precious prequels. Oh, poor thing. But it's in the Star Wars canon, and I'm totally on board. I'll go see all of them.
Let's get into some of the... There is some minor backlash about this movie, and that's inevitable. About The Force Awakens. There's some minor backlash as far as some people saying that it too closely parallels the events of A New Hope. Some people have gone so far as to say it even rips off the story of A New Hope. You know, there's a third Death Star and all these things. And to that, I say, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Because I fucking love Star Wars, and you can tell the same story six different ways, and I'm going to see it. You know, I'm okay with that.
Yes, I feel the same way. My brother, I saw the second time with my brother Joe, and he went, it was kind of predictable. Because it was like, and I just said to him, I said, Joe, we're not talking about this for the rest of the day. And we just went about our Christmas day, because I feel like that too. I'm like, so what? It's dependably great.
Absolutely. It's the issues that I have with Marvel movies, I don't have with these movies yet.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
So I'm very, very excited about this movie. Oh, and I'm sorry, there are some people that claim that this movie is just on par with the prequels, and I'm going to take the diplomatic route and say that I disagree with that assessment. George Lucas. We talked about George Lucas and the fact that they basically ignored his ideas. There was some speculation that he was going to just tell the continuing story of Luke Skywalker and his kids and Solo's kids. And maybe that's happening. Maybe they plucked a couple ideas from him. I read an interview, I saw an interview on YouTube where he was being interviewed, I think by Charlie Rose or somebody.
Charlie Rose.
Yeah, where he mentioned that, and he says breaking up, he says that he compares losing Star Wars to a breakup. And then in the first year of a breakup, you have to cut off all communications. You don't call them, you don't call the person you broke up with, you don't talk to them, you don't show up at their door. I mean, I'm paraphrasing what he said here.
Right.
He did make a comment initially that he enjoyed the movie. He has since taken a bit of a harsher stance towards the Star Wars.
He was interviewed by Charlie Rose, and he's basically saying now that it was too retro, it was almost too loyal to the original movies, and he was saying he wanted to talk about all new things and new planets and new spaceships and stuff like that, which nobody wants to see.
We saw that. We saw that.
Nobody cared. I mean, he just a very obstinate guy, he doesn't get like that people didn't want to see his version of it anymore. But he sold this property to Disney for $4 billion. Let's just say that again. He sold it for he got $4 billion because of this deal. And then he was shocked that they didn't want to like include him in all their ideas. But he compared it to white slavery. Like he gave away this property. And it's like, that's not slavery, sweetheart. That's not how slavery works. And he's had to apologize for it.
Yeah, he's since retracted that white slavery comment.
And I get it. This is his passion. It's the thing he created. It's from his brain from over 45 years ago. And he still cares about it and loves it and all that. But you shouldn't have sold it. When you sell something to somebody else, that's it.
Here's what I have to say to this. Here's what I have to say to Lucas and his sort of his complaints about, breaking up is hard to do and everything. you could have made 3 more Star Wars movies, and each one of them would have made $1 billion, because no matter what, we would have gone and saw them. We would have watched them. You could have done it. People would have been excited. They would have been excited.
I don't know. My personal theory, I told you when you and I were talking on the phone before, is that he saw that Red Letter Media, those videos, and he realized, like, I'm losing my touch, and somebody else needs to take. I swear to you. But then once he did that, and they did what they did with it, he got upset. Like, for some reason, he wants to do some more. Like he said, it's a space soap opera, and he wanted to have more spaceships and different planets and stuff like that. And nobody wants that. No. Nobody wants it.
So I will say thank you, George, for creating Star Wars. Absolutely. I'm done seeing The Force Awakens in theaters. 4 times is enough. It's something I will own on Blu-ray when it comes out, and I'm eagerly excited for director commentaries and things like that, and behind the scenes stuff like that. Because we got very little. I especially got very little this past year on the Star Wars. I'm not going to do that again. So I guess, you know what, we'll go ahead and wrap things up here right now, because I think we covered pretty much everything we needed to talk about.
I think we've exhausted the topic.
Yeah. I mean, I think
we have.
The title of the show is How Is This Movie? And I very rarely do movie reviews. So I think Margot and I can safely tell you that if you ask the question, how is Star Wars The Force Awakens? It's phenomenal. And it's great. It deserves to be viewed multiple times. So, Margot, I want to thank you for joining me today. Before you go, however, please tell everybody how they can find Book versus Movie and, all the different platforms, social media, and all that stuff.
Thank you so much. So the best place to reach us is at Facebook, facebook.com/book versus movie. Margot and I do a lot of interaction there. And especially if you have ideas for future episodes we should do, drop them there. We're also on Twitter. We're trying to increase our Twitter presence. So just at Book versus Movie, spell it out. And we're also on the web, bookversusmovie.com. And I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick. That's my personal blog. And I'm at Brooklyn Fit Chick for Twitter as well.
That's awesome. So listen, Happy New Year. Again, I want to tell everybody we're recording on January 1st. And this was a recording that has... The subject may have changed, but you and I had planned to do a show together for months.
6 months.
6 months now. And, and again, the fault in that lies solely on me, because I have one of the ridiculously busiest schedules that it's not even fair sometimes. I actually have no work today. So I'm going to, when we're done here, I don't even know what I'm going to do. I might just go for a walk, just to give you an idea. I have no free time. So thank you very much for joining us. And, I'm definitely going to have you back on the show again before Star Wars Rogue One comes out, because there's a few books that I want to discuss with you, because you're
absolutely
the knowledge that you bring when it comes to the book versus movie universe. I think that's just terrific. So
absolutely, anytime. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes, at Stitcher, Book versus Movie Podcast.
Okay, excellent.
So definitely subscribe to us there.